Hello and welcome to the 2020 Latino Comics Expo Worldwide. My name is Elizabeth Aguilar, and on behalf of the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach, California, I'd like to thank you for joining us today as we celebrate Latinx art and comics. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the event sponsors that made it possible to make this week-long event free of charge. Here's a brief welcome from our presenting sponsors, Hyundai.
On behalf of Hyundai Motor America, we welcome you to the 2020 Latino Comic Expo. As part of our Hispanic Heritage Celebration, we are thrilled to sponsor this great event. We hope that you enjoy the amazing Latino talent that will be featured.
Additional support was provided by San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, the Josephine S. Gumbiner Foundation, the Robert Gumbiner Foundation, the City of Long Beach, and the Arts Council of Long Beach. Your host, moderator for today is Javier Solorzano. Javier Solorzano is a comic book writer and artist. He's currently working on Super Lucha Cats, a new series about a family of Lucha Libre cats from Bell Gardens who fight monsters throughout Los Angeles. He's also the writer and artist behind the Lucha Libre comic Luchisimo, as well as the clothing brand Lucha Cat, where he designs apparel inspired by cats, Lucha Libre, and retro gaming. I'll leave you with Javier and the rest of our amazing participants. Enjoy the program.
Hi, my name is Javier Solorzano. Welcome to the Latino Comics Expo Worldwide. You're joining us now for the Lucha Libre Comics Roundtable, and I have an all-star lineup of people here for you guys to check out. Four of my favorite creators in the entire planet, and I'm about to introduce them to you. First up, we have Rafael Navarro, the creator of the Sonambulo series. We also have J.Gonzo, creator of La Mano del Destino. Behind him, we have Jandro Gamboa, the writer and creator of Monty Lopez as the Luchador. And last but not least, we have Carlo Flores, creator of the Mighty Luchador. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Great.
Good.
How you doing there, Javi?
Hey, good morning or good afternoon.
Sweet. So, as the topic implies, this conversation is going to be about Lucha Libre and comics. You guys have a wealth of knowledge and background in dealing with all of this. And I want to start the conversation off by sort of going to the beginning and having each of you talk about a little bit about what about Lucha Libre drew you in. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Ralph. If you want to talk about that a little bit and get us going.
Well, sure. I mean, I'm sure like all of us, Lucha Libre pretty much was something you kind of grew up with. You know, it's like playing baseball or basketball, and then you watch wrestling with your family, most likely dad. Same thing with me. I not only had the wonderful opportunity to watch wrestling with my parents and my family all together, in the evening, I was also treated to the movies that some of those enmascarados would make, you know, in the 50s and the 60s, and some in the 70s too. And I'd watch those as well too, and they were pretty much canon when it came to just superheroes. They were just Mexico's answer to Superman and Captain America and Batman to me, except they were real. At least that's what I was taught for me to be in my heart. So yeah, no, that's where it all came down to. So when my time came to finally do a self-published indie project of my own design, I just easily just looked back into my origins. I just, you know, went to the things that I grew up with instead of just doing the same old run-of-the-mill, whatever is popular at the moment, you know, and try to emulate that sort of thing. I decided to just tap into my culture and see what I could do with it. Because at the time, there was nothing like it, guys. I mean, you think Arizona's a desert, Jason? Let me tell you about the desert that was the Lucha Libre comic business that was the early 90s. There was nothing here. Aside from just anything outside of Mexico, no such thing existed except for just WWF and all the American wrestling. Most people's perspectives of the luchador, the enmascarado, the masked wrestler, was kind of they thought of it as a fetish. That's how offshoot their mind frame was, or at least the extension of their imagination was at the time. I would like to hope to say that we've done something there to at least educate the popular culture that it is a legitimate form of artwork, and it will hopefully continue to be both in wrestling itself and in comics as well.
J.Gonzo, do you want to talk a little bit about what drew you in?
I came to it by way, like I was an American wrestling fan, and then I was a fan of the Lucha Libre movies. And I think what drew me in was the kind of normalization of the extension of kayfabe into the real world. The fact that those guys didn't have an alter ego, like it wasn't, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, pretending to be like it's just Dwayne Johnson playing a character in an American movie, or at that time it was like Hulk Hogan being some other character in an American movie. Whereas in an El Santo movie, El Santo is El Santo in the movie, and he's got, he's in his suit with his mask on and out in the world. And I just love that agreed upon extension of kayfabe that extended out into the real world, that those guys had no alter ego and they were no one beyond the mask. And so kind of my own, I've heard it said often, and I think Michael Chabon has said that every writer writes the same story over and over again. And my particular fetish is identity. Like I love the idea of identity, and so I love the heightened stakes of like the luchador's mask being extended out into the real world to the point at which it obliterates the other identity. Like who they are outside the mask doesn't matter, and there's no opportunity to even engage with that person. And so they are fully in control of constructing an identity of their choosing by their actions and not by who they are and what they look like. And that just something that resonated with me. So when it came time to write my story, my own weird infatuation with destiny and identity got wrapped up into the heightened stakes of Lucha Libre, and the bright, vibrant colors and kind of, the pageantry of it is something that I love. It's what I love about superhero comics, I kept, like, much like Rafael, like I kept seeing the inclusion of Lucha Libre, but as like a weird fetish item, right? Like it was, look at this silly guy with his mask on out in the world. And none of them were ever wrestling, like they or even acknowledged that they wrestled. It was just a dude in a mask, ostensibly a luchador who was like a hitman or a bodyguard or some kind. And I just got kind of sick of having, saying things like, oh, someone should write a story where the luchador wrestles. Someone should do a story where the wrestling is important. Someone should do a story where Lucha Libre is treated with respect. And finally, I just decided to put in, like, I'm just going to have to make this, aren't I? So that's what brought me to write my thing.
I think we're all the better for it.
Thank you.
I think it's interesting that you bring up identity as a sort of segue for Jandro's book, because identity is kind of in the title of your series.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
When I originally came up with the title, Monty Gomez is the Luchador, I had thought, oh, this is going to be the title all the way through. But it was... but like now that I'm writing, I just finished the first arc. We can talk about that later. I'm very excited. I finished it just in time for nobody to be able to see it. But I think we're all facing that right now. But going on with, wait, where was Mr. Gonzo? Wait, hold on.
Gonzo's fine.
Gonzo, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Going on with what he said, I was kind of frustrated in the early 2000s with the idea that, like, oh, here's a luchador. Ha ha ha. Let's laugh at the luchador. He's wearing a stupid mask. Nobody gets it. He thinks it's real, that kind of thing. So that's why I wanted that statement. Monty Gomez is the luchador. And then probably about issue 3, I was working with Bernice Talley. I think a lot of you guys know her. She was the original artist. She said, is he ever going to wrestle? And I was like, oh, damn. Okay. So I worked something in the story where the media calls him that, again, playing off that idea that, oh, well, he's just the luchador. Like, you know how, like, in the comics, the public names the hero. Sometimes. In the future arcs, the word luchador is going to be in there, but it's not going to be Monty Gomez is. So I'm just going to kind of change that, do the kind of like a James Bond thing. But yeah, like a lot of, like everybody that spoke before me and probably after me, I grew up with this. And what Gonzo was saying, I never thought about it, but that was operating in my head, that these are superheroes that are always superheroes. There's no mild-mannered reporter who's also El Santo. There's no, test pilot that's also the Blue Demon. They're always on. And I never thought about that, but that's a big part of it. And then just the idea that the mask is everything, whether you're a luchador or Batman in comics, the mask is everything. Granted, I think about 1,400 people know who Batman is at this point, but that, used to be a little more sacred. I'm like in my own story, I'm very careful not to have like everybody know that Monty Gomez is the luchador. Either they find out because they're nefarious or because he says, I need to save this relationship or friendship. I think that might be all I have to add to that, other than I think about, like, we were getting a resurgence of the luchador with what was that called, Lucha Underground and all that stuff, and then it just blipped and disappeared, and I was so disappointed. So I'm glad everybody here is carrying that on in ways that will last more than if you were got under the control of a huge network or something. That's why I like the indie stuff. There's always gonna be luchadors there. I have all your books, maybe not all of them at this point, but I have all your books, most of your t-shirts. I love you guys. I love the work. I'm glad that at least at this level, we're still getting it out there.
I really like that you brought up the idea of the luchador as a superhero, because that's something I always tell people is luchadores, they're real life superheroes. Like Batman is, right now he's Robert Pattinson. Next year he might be Ben Affleck again. But Blue Demon Jr. is always going to be that same guy, and he exists on this planet. So this idea of luchadores as superheroes is a nice segue for Carlo, because your luchadores deal with a lot of that supernatural sort of power and aesthetic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So it's interesting. Just talking about how I got into this, like everybody said, they experienced it in their childhood. When I was a kid, I went to visit my family on my dad's side in Mexico, and I went to a lot of Lucha Libre fights, and it was like, what the hell is this? Like the theatrics and craziness. It always fascinated me. Later in life, as I got into the ad industry and working in a lot of ad agencies, and here in LA, I started working on a lot of properties like Marvel, Disney, I guess Disney and Marvel, DC Comics, Warner Brothers. I started working for these places and doing stuff for their big superhero properties, whether it was The Flash, Batman, all the Marvel characters. I was doing stuff for them, and I was like, it's very American. It's very, it's very whitewashed, just to say it out loud. It's like, it's very whitewashed. It's like, me being Mexican, it's like, oh my God, we have this giant array of amazing superheroes that through their masks, they do supernatural things. They're acrobatic, they're amazing. Like we have our own superheroes to take from that. So why not explore that? And that's how I kind of dived into it and got really interested. I was like, okay, this mythology is amazing. I love to explore it. And, again, we have our own superheroes. Let's put those out there. Let's put those superheroes, those amazing figures like El Santo, like Blue Demon out there and get that exposure to them. And so my take was like, okay, well, I can do something I didn't want to rip them off solely. I wanted to do my own take on them, but inspired definitely by, the main ones, El Santo, Blue Demon, Mil Mascaras, La Parca. They're all influenced my superheroes. But recently I've been sort of taking a different approach to it in that, now meeting and being in this industry or this community and meeting all these different luchadors, meeting them personally, it's like there is another view behind the mask. They are people. They're fallible, vulnerable people that experience a lot of, issues. These things they do in the ring. It's amazing, but they're really putting their health and their safety on the line. And so it's sort of like it's taken those superheroes and really made them very human. And my thing is very comedic and funny. On my new comic book, I do explore more of that sort of human side to them and how they are fallible, how they are vulnerable people with emotions.
That's a really good thing to bring up too, because I think people tend to forget that behind the mask, he may be a superhero, but he or she is still a person who has a family. And a story I've told a lot of people when they ask me about my relationship with it is, I found out, having done this, that I grew up around neighbors who were luchadores, and I had no idea as a kid. That's a really good segue to the next topic I want to jump on, is asking you guys a little bit about what did you learn about Lucha Libre? How did your relationship with it evolve or change through the work on your series and your books? Because I think it's impossible to jump into this world and not have a different perspective on it and a different view on how society looks at it. I'm gonna go ahead and have J.Gonzo lead us off with this one if you have something to say on it.
Man, I think I had started with just kind of a love of them as heroes. Like I really just, these are the guys I love and I want to present them in a positive light. And then in trying to marry that with my own, what I'm trying to posit as far as like identity and destiny goes and the story I wanted to tell there. And then also trying to approximate or allegorize like Mexican mythology within the mythos of my character. I realized that the traditions of Lucha Libre have been there all along. The mask wearing, the assumed identity has been indigenous to Mesoamerica. And it was something that was, I think there's, I began to explore like why Lucha Libre is so intrinsically Mexican, right? Like what it is about Mexicans that resonates with the luchador as a hero and why that doesn't translate to perhaps other cultures. And I kind of, I came to a point where I started to think that like, Mexicans have a tenuous relationship with identity, right? Because we are indigenous and we're Spanish. Like, I carry the last name of a conqueror, but I have the skin color of the conquered. I'm as much conquistador as I am conqueror. And so, so I felt that a lot of our heroes have no identity. Your Zorros, you're like, one of the biggest comic books in Mexico in the 60s was an Invisible Man comic. Like the main character literally wasn't drawn. He was completely defined by his actions. And so I feel like our heroes can be anyone, and they're not defined by who they inherently are, but by what they do. And I think that that's something that like an ego-driven American society can't get its head around. Like we want the hero to have a face and identity and know him, whatever his foibles might be, but we still love that kind of like lone person who can, stand up in the face of, against all odds and win. And it is very much tied to who they are. It's like that kind of King Arthur mythology. It's like he was born to be king, which is why he could pull the sword out. Whereas in Mexican mythology, like, no, you can assume the mask and then be that person you want to be, despite whatever whatever your upbringing was, because we are a society that was kind of built that way. And so I think that just the depth of emotional resonance of Lucha Libre really struck me as I kind of explored these themes and culture throughout the comic. And it was something that kind of really, I hadn't really ever analyzed until I did this. And then once it clicked in with me, I'm like, oh man, it's like this is deeper than dudes in mass beating on each other, even though it's dudes in mass beating on each other. And that's kind of like how I had shifted to a more reverent, if that was even possible, a more reverent kind of appreciation for what the luchador as a hero means to the Mexican people and why he is intrinsically Mexican.
That's really awesome, because I think that's an experience you can really only have through something like Lucha Libre, because like you said, the background with Mexico being a conquered land. I'm really curious, Ralph, how did your relationship with Lucha Libre sort of evolve, and what did you learn when you did this? Because when you did this, it was kind of uncharted waters for somebody in your position.
In comics, it was definitely uncharted waters, maybe even from an American perspective as well, too. Had you not grown up with some of those Santo movies, being redubbed in English as Samson. So yeah, it was definitely new ground. For me, it was just basically something I grew up with and wanting to share my culture with whoever wants to ponder upon it and enjoy the adventure along with me. But adding some more to what Gonzo was saying there, one of the things that just came to mind right now that I've always admired about luchadores and enmascarados in general is the power of anonymity. They're built like regular guys, right? And women too. They put those masks on and suddenly they become larger than life. But the beauty of it all is that who is behind that mask? I mean, it could be your dad. It could be your uncle. It could be your aunt. She's just keeping an eye on you, making sure you don't get into trouble. You make sure you get back home. And that was the greatest strength those things had. It was something that you could also relate to. I mean, as much as I loved and adored the origin of Superman, mortal being from another planet coming back, coming to this world to save this one, but I have no relationship to these gods. But I can certainly, have some sort of reference point to this enmascarado guy who looks about as tall as my uncle. He walks like my dad, but he's got my other uncle's kind of temper tantrum. So, I mean, those are little traits I could relate to. And that's one of the things I've always loved about luchadores in general, is that they could be anybody. And it's their greatest strength too. What I guess what I did learn from luchadores is of late is that they're eternal. I mean, they're representations of what Mexico has to offer in folklore. America has the cowboy, Japan has the samurai, and Mexico has luchadores. I mean, we want to go to ancient history. The Romans had their gods too, as did the Grecians, but they had Heracles and Hercules, both Roman Grecians. We have Mil Máscaras, we have Blue Demon, we have one and only El Santo. And as far as I'm concerned, those are the heroes, I guess, we aspire to, just as, ancient civilization would, I guess, adorize their characters, like Gilgamesh. I guess they're Mexican Gilgameshes to me.
I just read Gilgamesh for like the fourth time.
Good man, Jandro.
I would totally take Blue Demon over Heracles any day.
The original Bill and Ted.
I'm really curious, Jandro, what your perspective on this is, because your main character also is kind of the reader's proxy to this world in his story.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Gonzo mentioned earlier the Conqueror and the Conquered. He's kind of dealing with that too. Monty is pretty much based on me, slacker 20s, Mexican, but doesn't speak Spanish. And my dad, he was a Mesoamerican studies professor, essentially. I grew up with mythology, all of that stuff. And anytime I felt bad that I didn't speak Spanish, he would say, "That's okay, your ancestors didn't either." I was like, oh, I want to use that at school. Maybe they won't beat me up anymore. But, but Monty deals with that too. Where like I deal with that, conqueror, conquers, like I got my, I got the same mix here. So for him, he's trying to, this is going to come out more in the next two arcs, but he's going to come to terms with that identity. He's becoming this hero when half of the people that adore him can't talk to him because he doesn't speak the language, doesn't quite get the culture. He's good-hearted. He wants to help, but and it's kind of reflecting what's going on right now, where cultures are just becoming more insular. I think it's a reaction because we don't feel like, a lot of people that don't look a certain way don't feel safe. So our culture is becoming more insular. Like, I have kids that are thankful that, because I teach high school, I have kids that are thankful that we're doing Zoom classes because there's no more rumors of ICE raids on campus. And I mean, I've got better attendance now than I've ever had. And so all that's swirling around my head when I'm writing this comic. And for Monty, he was influenced by and by the way, Monty in the comic, it's short for Moctezuma. And he has a brother named Napoleon because his parents were professors too. They thought it's going to be revealed later, spoiler, that their parents kind of gave the boys a boy named Sue situation. Like, we're going to give you these names and you're going to have to overcome them. But that's creeping up in the comic right now. And I think anybody that's creating anything right now, it's hard to avoid. I would always tell Bernice, I just want this to be a fun comic. I don't want the real world to creep in, but it's getting harder to keep that out. And as mentioned before, the luchador is an ancient tradition. Before I read Gilgamesh, I read a book on Joaquin Murrieta. He's a real life figure that Zorro is basically based on. And before that, I read like 5 books on Aztec mythology. And Joaquin, he was a luchador. He may not have worn the mask, he might not have been in a ring, but he talked smack. He cut those promos. He had a code, and the code might not have made sense to everybody. Like, oh, those men, slaughter them and gut them. Those men don't take their gold. They worked hard. I mean, it was almost like whatever the plot needed, that's what he was. And even in El Santo movies, you saw that. Sometimes he was all about that, doing the right thing. But there was a movie, one of the El Santo movies. He's fighting like mummies or vampires, and says, "Oh, I have to get to the ring," and then the fight was just over. Like, I don't even think he like knocked out the last guy. He's just like, gotta go. He left a fight half done.
Priorities.
And then going back, like the Aztec ceremonies, masks, pageantry, capes. I mean, that we see that in the ring now. And I'm very lucky. I live in Santa Maria, California. It's pretty central. We get a lot of, we used to get a lot of independent wrestling shows. And it would be like, Joe Sixpack, like Napomo Steve. Napomo's a suburb. Like a lot of local guys, but they would always get one big guy. And somebody was talking before about how the luchador is real. I got to meet Psychosis, and it was a mixed bag, because like, yeah, this guy's a legend, but I also see him like going, getting out of his chair. Like you could hear his muscles and bones just creaking. They're very real people, and you do and don't want to believe that. And those are people, people my age that grew up where were being told wrestling was fake. We don't want to believe that about Lucha Libre, because they are the gimmick. They live the gimmick. And that's another thing that Monty tries to face, even when he's not, because he can't wear the mask all the time, but he wants to be that hero all the time. It's just, he's got that Spider-Man thing where I can do the right thing, but I'm going to miss Aunt May's birthday. I could do the right thing, but I'm going to have to stand up Mary Jane. The luchador has always been there, so it's hard not to say that it's always influenced everybody's comics, much less ours.
Yeah, I really like the running theme through each of your guys' response that essentially goes to the culture is going to persist. It's going to keep, it's like grass and concrete. It's going to find its way out, and it's going to keep propping up. And you guys are a big part of that. You guys are still creating content that wrestles with this, pun totally intended. So I want to give you guys a chance to talk a little bit about what that means for you going forward, because you guys are still creating work. You guys are still writing, drawing, putting stuff out. And I want to set up Carlo here because I know that you have an issue 2 coming out.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that and how maybe sort of the last 3-4 years have affected how you approach that?
Sure. Well, it's funny because I was just thinking back. It's been about 5 years. What is it? My fictitious business name, which I created one for this, just expired, and it's the 5-year date. Like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 5 years. I can't believe it. It's gone right by. It has definitely evolved. Like I mentioned, like this started out as an idea to explore that mythology and these characters and to create my twist on it. And in a way, we were talking about identity and how that plays into our identity, culturally, who we are, and definitely my stories do encapsulate my identity, who I am, who do I want to be, and the different facets of who I am. There's comedy, there's horror, there's good, and there's bad. But I do have a second comic book coming out. I guess we're kind of we're almost done. About 9 more pages out of, it's going to be a 40-page book, which is big. Yeah. Woo!
40-page giant.
What was that?
40-page giant, like the old DC books, the 100-page giants.
Right. I guess 40 pages to 100 pages. It's 40. Like my last one was so short because it was just a little brief, introduction to how the characters get to who they are. It didn't even introduce all the characters. This second one is much larger in scope. It really introduces the whole family of characters, including Senor Fuego behind me. But it really, like I was mentioning earlier, was exploring their own personal identities. And also what's always interested me is Joseph Campbell's, as we all know, the hero's journey, which is a very westernized view of, a hero's journey, as Lucas was inspired by. But I love that. We sort of dive into the character, the creation of the character, and their sort of catharsis moment and their journey across. So this second comic book is really going to be covering that. Okay, where are the characters? They are these things now. They're these fighters, these wrestlers with supernatural abilities. Where do they go from there? Who are they? And how do they get more in touch with themselves through that process?
I love that. And I had no idea you were working on a 40-page book. So whatever pre-order thing you have set up, let me know.
Not yet.
Continuing the theme of new work, I know, Gonzo, you just wrapped up a bit of a milestone with your series, and you're putting out what I think is a really cool concept with a flip book in English and Spanish. Do you want to talk a little bit about that project?
Oh yeah, man. So moving forward, I finished issue 6. It was always planned to be a 6-issue limited series. I'm kind of doing the Hellboy model where I'm going to do sets of like limited series, probably all of them 6 issues. So I'm collecting it into a trade paperback. But when I had done the comic originally, I really wanted to print them, do an English version and a Spanish version. But I ended up first I was in Diamond, and Diamond told me basically no one buys Spanish comic books is what I've been told. That's what the direct market. And I feel like it's not that no one buys Spanish language comic books. I think the direct market isn't set up to support Spanish language comic books. So the prevailing wisdom is no one buys, and to deal with Diamond is to deal with the direct market. So I was at their whim. Also, after 2 issues, I was out of Diamond, and I was self-financing the production of all of my, I wasn't doing it backing against pre-orders. I didn't know I was going to sell, 800 or 1,300 books or whatever. So I had to self-finance all of my printing. And so I just couldn't afford to do 2 versions of every book. But it was always super important to me that the book exists in Spanish, because my biggest critique of Lucha Libre in American pop culture is that they weren't getting it right. And part of getting it right is that it have a Spanish language version of it. So with the trade paperback, I'm collecting all 6 issues, story pages, as they appeared in the book is primarily in English. There are a few Spanish phrases here and there. I'm also translating the book into Spanish, and everything that was in English, or everything that was in Spanish in the English book, is going to be in English in the Spanish version of the book. So the book itself is going to have 172 story pages in Spanish, and then like a flip book, when you flip it over, you'll have a Spanish language cover. All 172 pages are going to be printed in Spanish. And the reason I want to do the flip book format is because you have, I have my mock-up here. So you have the English cover, and you can open it up, and there's English page 1 and page 2 and what have you. But then you also flip it over, and you have a Spanish cover, and you open it up. So if you're a Spanish speaker or an English speaker, you have a cover that is facing you, and the Spanish language isn't an addendum to the English version, nor is the English version an addendum to the Spanish version. They both just have their halves, and they're equally there. So that's what I'm doing. I also have 24 pages of bonus material. I've got 14 pinups by a lot of really great artists that I'm going to start announcing soon. But yeah, this is what I wanted the book to be always, and I just couldn't afford to make that happen, which is why I'm kickstarting it now, and just hoping that the audience is there. And to be honest with you, I know the audience is there. I just think it's going to take time to get them and get the message to them. And so my campaign is 60 days, so I have full, the full amount of time that I could possibly do to just get out there and let people know it exists. And I know it's not for everybody, but I know it's for enough people that it can get supported. I just want to let them know that it's there. And so I'm trying to take my time to get things like this will help me do that. So I appreciate the opportunity to do this. So, and then moving forward, like you asked, again, part of my dissatisfaction with the way Mexican pop culture had been portrayed in American culture, how Mexican culture had been portrayed in American pop culture, is that you always see it kind of like sepia tone and brown and dirty looking. And so kind of my biggest MO, when moving forward into my comic, was to be bright and vibrant and the Latino hues that I know from my childhood. And so I feel that part of being a minority or marginalized person in America is twofold. You gotta fight your fight, and you gotta get your rights, right? That's part of it. But also you've got to express your beauty, right? We have to show the culture that we're fighting for. And so in as much as I'm down to fight my fight, my comic is an expression of beauty of our culture. And so moving forward, I kind of the next series of issues is going to be La Mano, kind of now that he is a known entity in that world that he lives in, kind of reconciling the supposition of who he is in that world. He's famous now, so he's going to make movies, and he's going to be on TV, and he's going to have cartoons and comics made after him that are going to be slightly versions of him that aren't quite approximated versions of him within that world. And so he's going to have to reconcile who he knows himself to be with the idea of people who know him. You know, it's like, you play a character on TV long enough, people start to think that you're that guy. And so he's kind of having to reconcile with that. And then that's going to deal heavily in like that expression of beauty idea that I have of like, that obligation to express your beauty, and put it out in the world. So that's where I'm at moving forward.
Big congratulations. I'm super excited because I just love that when you open up your cover, it's a full mask. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, you can put the Spanish and English versions together to make one big image. Yeah.
Speaking of new content, again, Jandro, I've seen the teasers on my social media. Please talk a little bit about what we have in store for Monty Gomez.
All right, so it's hard to talk about without, because I did try to put a little twist in there, but issue 5 is, let me take it out of this little thing. Issue 5 is printed. It's in my hands. I have met with the artist. The new artist is Nathan Campos. He lives up in like Santa Cruz. Cool guy. He has a lot of energy. He just got out of college. I don't tell him this because he's very conscious of the age thing. I'm 43. He's like 22.
I think you just did. So just.
He's a very cultured. Anyways, he's got a lot of energy, is what I'm saying. So like, I was kind of going like, oh, well, I'll do like an issue a year. That seems to be like that seems to be good for, a self-financed independent comic that that I have to move around in my trunk because there ain't no diamond for me. Nope, he wants to do three or 4 years. So I'm like, oh. I'm trying to explain, like, I have to live. Like, I have to have experiences to put in there. But all right, I guess I can live a little faster. But issue 5 is out. It wraps up the first storyline. He establishes his identity, and I mean, that's a beautiful dang cover. I mean,
that's a beautiful cover.
Yeah, he sent it to me, and I'm like, well, you're kind of giving away a spoiler with that cover, but. Damn, is it beautiful? So, darn, is it beautiful? So, let's keep that. Going forward, I have 2 more arcs planned. And somebody mentioned Joseph Campbell earlier. I'm in that mold too, where he's going through the steps, and I'm also doing the 3 different kinds of conflict. The first one is, Monty Gomez is the luchador, like you mentioned. He's coming to terms with his identity. So he's already going to finish Man versus Self. Like within the comic itself, he starts to doubt himself. He starts to wonder, like, am I doing the right thing? Because the cops aren't down with me. And again, that has a different meaning nowadays. But when 4 years ago, well, no, it was just as bad 4 years ago. Dang it. Well, you guys see where I'm going. But the next one is going to be Man versus Nature. I'll give a little teaser on that. Monty has a girlfriend named Lizzie. And she goes to school in Berkeley, and I don't know if you guys know this about the Bay Area. They have some what do you call that? Seismological issues up there. And
it's all California.
Well, that's true. So there's going to be a big earthquake. He's going to be cut off with communication. So he's going to drive up there and see what he can do. And that's where it's going to be a man versus nature, but he's also going to learn how big the world he's in. Because in my world, there are other superheroes. They just don't hang out in small towns. Monty's based in a fictional town that's partially Santa Maria, partially Ventura. Like, I lived there for a year or two. And it's named directly after a suburb of Santa Maria called Guadalupe. Good surfing out there. But I remember asking my dad, are superheroes real? He's like, no. And if they were, they wouldn't come here. And so he's going to go to a bigger city and see, like, wait a minute, I can see, because he's in East Bay, I can see all the heroes over the Transamerica Tower and getting those photo ops, but there's no heroes over here in Emeryville and Oakland. So he's going to learn like a little bit about that. I guess an economic divide. He's going to be more superheroes. I'm very excited to expand his world. And then and we're also going to meet his villain. I snuck him in there. He's already appeared twice in the first series, and much like most comic book characters, he creates his own villain. You know, his own actions cause it. You know, kind of like your Batmans with your Two Faces and Jokers, depending on which story you believe. Kind of like Spider-Man, he's created his worst villain, and I get chills writing him. I'm not going to give away his name yet because it's a beautiful page that Nathan already has designed. But when when I wrote that, I was like, "Damn, I'm good." And then when I saw Nathan's ideas for how to introduce him, I'm like, "You get it, because he's going to be another villain with a lucha mask, and he is going to wrestle. He's a grappler. He's going to bring Monty back to the real world, and that'll carry on into the last storyline where I'm not going to guarantee everyone's going to live."
Oh my God.
Oh, I am excited. Oh,
how dare you tease that out now?
Well, it's going to come faster than I thought. Originally, it would have been concluded when I was about 54 years old. It's going to be done sooner.
Cool. And then Ralph, can we expect any new stuff on your end? What are you working on? Let us know.
Okay. Anything related or lucha related?
Yeah, we want to know what Ralph's doing. What's going on in Navarro world?
Okay, well, in Navarro world, there's always something going on. If it isn't just making something to pay the mortgage or feeding my cats or whatnot. But in the Lucha Libre world, I am 3/4, if not maybe 4/5 of the way completed with a new Sonambulo book. There, I said it. The working title still is Curse of Sonambulo, but I might change it. It's just a collection of short stories I've been doing for quite some time. It's just a question of me finally having the courage to just cut that umbilical cord and let your monster roam free into the earth and do what it's going to do, come what may. Let's see. I do have another Guns Blazing project that I am working on at the same time too. There's always animation, which is the day job. That's always there. Other prospects, which I'm not at liberty to mention right now, are still in the works. Jason, you know what I'm talking, right? Right? Okay, yeah. Dude, we need to talk later, dude. I am so close. I could touch the holy grail. I could just barely touch it. It's that close. It's ridiculous.
Fantastic. I should probably mention you have a pinup in the trade paperback as well. I totally spaced on that. Oh, is that a secret? All right, everyone who just heard that.
We're gonna say okay.
Exclusive.
So we'll omit that part if you will. But plans are underway to try to translate a certain character that I created onto a different format. If all goes well, just don't sacrifice any lambs or anything alive. Just pass good mojo, folks, because we're getting there.
Hopefully we get the LCX Worldwide crowd to send some of that energy over.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna hold each of you four guys to putting out what you guys just talked about, because there's no way you can tease it out like this and not actually follow through.
No. Half the fun is to tantalize everybody so they can come back again next year.
So we're out of time. I want to thank each of our panelists for giving us and sharing their time with us, because any amount of time I get to spend with any of you guys I treasure it forever, because I always learn something new. On our way out, we're going to do a quick lightning round, which I did not warn any of you about on purpose. So on the way out, just repeat your name for anybody who might have been joining in halfway through, where they can find your work online. If you have an online shop that people might want to peruse through and do some online shopping in light of the end of the world being upon us. And favorite luchador, luchadora, doesn't have to be all time, it can be in the moment. So we're gonna go ahead and start. On my screen, it's Carlo, Gonzo, Ralph, and Jandro. So we'll go in that order. Carlo, lead us off.
Carlo A. Flores, the mind and creator behind the Mighty Luchador, MightyLuchador.com. Find it on social media, Instagram and Facebook. And you can buy Senor Fuego behind me and more on MightyLuchador.com.
Favorite luchador, luchadora?
God, El Santo, but La Parca,
Yeah.
R.I.P. Gonzo.
Yeah, so I'm currently running a Kickstarter. So J.Gonzo, my comic is La Mano del Destino, currently running a Kickstarter through October 3rd. So just go to Kickstarter, look for La Mano del Destino. It comes up pretty quickly. Like I don't even think you have to finish typing it in before it comes up. So please pledge if you can. There's some pretty great reward levels. If you want to find my work, you can find me online, J.Gonzo Art, on like some social medias. Also, I have a website for me personally, which is jgonzodesigns.com. And then my favorite luchador, like all time, would be El Santo, of course. Currently wrestling, I'm going to go with Cassandro. Is my perfect, is my favorite. Yeah. And they just they're putting a biopic together about Cassandro, and they just put a documentary out. So check out Cassandro. Excellent story.
Cool. Ralph.
Oh dear, Rafael Navarro. I draw pictures for a living. Sometimes I even draw conclusion. I'm very easily obtainable online. I have a Facebook page. I usually try to answer most of my questions there at facebook.com/Rafael.Navarro. IG, I'm on Rafael_Navarro 007. I answer emails there too. Website will be up as soon as that new Sonambulo book, as soon as I have something brand new to sell, folks. I have to do a reprint of the original Sleep of the Just, the original Sonambulo book, because the trade paperback is completely sold out. I found one box of issue 1, plus half a box of issue 2 and 2 boxes of issue 3, and that's all that is left of the original series, folks. Ooh. So I'm in desperate need of having to print that thing as soon as possible. Before I do that, I want to make sure I have even newer projects to publish too as well too. What else? Luchador. Oh gosh, I love them all. Obviously, my holy trinity is always going to be Santo, Mil, and Blue. I'd say Blue only because if Santo is Superman, then without question, Blue is definitely the Dark Knight detective. And as for favorite luchadora, I'd say a Sweet Beloved Wife, because Blue Demon's wife, I think her name was Lucha. She was the coolest gal ever, man. She had this big, beautiful beehive hairdo, and she used to keep that mofo in line, dude. So, yeah, there you go.
Jandro.
Hi, Jandro Gamboa. I created the world's worst website because it was my childhood nickname, Labishka, LABISHKA -Inc.com. That's where you can find my books. Instagram at Monty Gomez Comic, not .com, right? At Monty Gomez Comic. And yeah, all 5 issues up. I got T-shirts, Bad Hombre. I wonder who came up with that. I also have other shirts, prints. I have prints of that. I just love this cover so much. I'm like, I gotta make prints, and they're not autographed by me, but they are autographed by the author. So those are available.
Favorite
no animation deals as of yet. My favorite luchador. I mean, saying El Santo is your favorite is like saying I like air, water, but aside from him, I think my answer was the same last time I was asked. Mil Muertes. Not just because I loved him on Lucha Underground, but he came to, like I said, we get the local shows. He came, and I'm sitting there like a chump-ass, smart-ass Mark with my nephew saying, oh, no, he's a big star. He's not. He was fighting for the championship. He's not going to win. He's just here to, holy crap, he won. That means we're going to see him again we're going to see him again. And I don't want to, I don't want to ruin it. He's a professional. He's a very nice guy. He lives the gimmick. Like, he still scares children, but you can tell like he's having fun with it. Mil Muertes is probably my current favorite. And the guy's a unit. He's like a refrigerator with legs. Like the screen doesn't do him justice. And then I don't know if she still wrestles, but and she's had like a bunch of different names. But Saturina,
yes,
I don't know if she's going by a different name now, but I loved her. I just loved her attitude, and like, I loved how she fought men because they allowed that in Lucha Underground. So that was really cool. I love that. And she wasn't just there to blow kisses. She was there to break faces. So she was pretty cool. I liked her a lot too.
Cool. Well, thank you guys again. I'm pretty sure we went over time. Apologies to Mola staff for having to do that, but thank you, Mola, for helping us out with this. Thank you to the sponsors. You've been watching the Latino Comics Expo Worldwide. This was the Lucha Libre Comics Roundtable. And again, thank you to the panelists for joining us. And we look forward to seeing all of the viewers in person, hopefully in a few months, depending on how we handle the current apocalypse going on outside. Thank you again, everybody, and adios.
Adios.